It was early morning, December 1st, 1948. The sun had just begun to rise over Somerton Beach, a quiet stretch of sand near Adelaide, Australia. The air was cool. The ocean was calm. Nothing about that morning suggested history was about to change. A man walking along the beach noticed something strange. First, it looked like someone resting. A well-dressed man sat against a low stone seawall, his legs stretched out neatly in front of him, his head tilted slightly to one side. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. People passed by earlier that night and thought the same thing. They assumed he was drunk, or sleeping, or simply enjoying the sea air. But now, in the daylight, something felt wrong. The man wasn't moving. A calm death that made no sense. Police were called. When officers arrived, they examined the body closely. The man was dead, but what immediately disturbed them wasn't how he died. It was how calm he looked. No signs of struggle, no blood, no visible injuries, no fear frozen on his face. He looked as if he had simply stopped existing. He was wearing a perfectly pressed suit, a white shirt, polished shoes. This wasn't beachwear. This wasn't casual. This was the clothing of a man who had somewhere important to be. Yet he had died alone, on the sand, with no witnesses. The first mystery. Who was he? Police searched his pockets. They expected to find something basic. An ID, a wallet, a letter, anything. Instead, they found almost nothing.
No identification. No passport.
No driver's license. No personal documents. Even stranger, every label inside his clothing had been carefully cut out. Not torn. Not damaged. Cut. With precision. Someone had made sure that no manufacturer's name, no tailor's mark, no origin could be traced. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. And suddenly, a simple, unexplained death became something much darker. The man who didn't exist. Police released photos of the man to newspapers across Australia. They waited. Days passed. Then weeks. No one came forward. No missing person matched his description. No family reported him missing. No employer recognized him. It was as if this man had appeared out of nowhere and vanished the moment he died. Doctors performed an autopsy. The results raised more questions than answers. An autopsy without a cause. The man was physically healthy, strong muscles, good posture, well-nourished. But inside his body, doctors noticed something disturbing. His organs showed signs consistent with poisoning. Yet no known poison could be detected.
No traces. No residue. No explanation.
The official cause of death? Unknown. And that word, unknown, would follow this case for decades. Why this death felt wrong. This wasn't the death of a homeless man. This wasn't the death of a random traveler. This man was educated, refined, possibly foreign. His hands were soft, not those of a laborer. His shoes were spotless, not what you'd expect from walking on sand. Even his hair was styled. Someone had taken care of how he looked. Someone wanted him to appear normal. The suitcase with no past. Investigators traced his movements backward. Eventually, they discovered a suitcase left at a nearby train station. It belonged to him. Inside were clothes. But again, every label had been removed. There were no letters.
No photographs.
No names. Only silence. It was as if someone had erased this man's entire life. The question that haunted police. Who goes to such extreme lengths to remove their identity? And why? Was he hiding? Or was he being erased? At this point, police began to consider a theory that would later terrify historians. What if this man wasn't just a victim? What if he was a spy? The Cold War shadow. The year was 1948. The Cold War had begun. Espionage was everywhere. Australia had secret military projects. Foreign intelligence agencies were active. People disappeared quietly. And suddenly, a man with no identity turns up dead on a beach. Coincidence? Or cover-up? Then came the note. Weeks after the body was discovered, something changed everything. During a deeper examination of the man's trousers, a hidden pocket was found. Inside it was a tiny, tightly rolled piece of paper. Only 2 words were written on it. Tamám Shud. The phrase was Persian. It meant, "It is finished." A message or a goodbye. Police were stunned. Why Persian? Why those words? Why hidden? The phrase wasn't random. It came from an ancient book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a book about fate, death, the meaninglessness of existence. And suddenly, this death didn't feel accidental. It felt planned. A death that was meant to stay silent. Someone had written a message that literally said, "This is the end." No name.
No explanation. No signature.
Just closure. Or a warning. What you're really looking at. This wasn't just a man found dead on a beach. This was a man who had no identity, no past, no cause of death, a cryptic final message, and a body that refused to explain itself. And this was only the beginning, because when police finally found the book that contained those words, they discovered something far more disturbing, something that turned this case into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern history. Inside that book was a code no one could break, a code that may have been written by the dead man himself, and a secret that suggested he didn't just die alone. He was part of something much bigger, something hidden, something dangerous. And once you see what was inside that book, you'll understand why this case still refuses to rest. The words Tamám Shud changed everything. Until that moment, police believed they were dealing with an unidentified death. Strange, yes. Suspicious, maybe, but not impossible. Now, they were staring at something else entirely. A message deliberately hidden. A phrase chosen with intent. A clue that felt personal. The search for the book. Police knew the phrase Tamám Shud came from one place. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. A book of Persian poetry. Ancient. Philosophical. Obsessed with fate, death, and the meaninglessness of life. But Australia was not Persia. And this was not a common book in 1948. Investigators began searching every bookstore, library, and secondhand shop in Adelaide. For weeks, nothing turned up. Then one man came forward. The book that shouldn't exist. A local man told police something unsettling. A few days before the Somerton man's body was found, he had discovered a book thrown into the back seat of his unlocked car. It was a copy of the Rubaiyat. At the time, he thought nothing of it. Now, police rushed to retrieve it. When they examined the book, they felt a chill, because the final page had been cleanly torn out. And that page was the page containing the words, Tamám Shud, perfect match. Forensic experts compared the torn page from the book to the tiny paper found in the dead man's pocket. They matched perfectly. This was not coincidence. The message in the man's pocket had come from this book, which meant one thing. The Somerton man had been in possession of this book shortly before his death, or someone close to him had. The code in the back. Then police noticed something else. Written faintly in pencil on the back pages of the book was a code. Rows of letters.
No punctuación.
No obvious meaning. Just lines like Gobabt, Mliawi, Pimpinip, Mliawi, Im Samstgab. It didn't resemble any known language. It didn't resemble poetry. It didn't resemble madness either. It looked structured, intentional. Truth. What we know for certain. By the end of this phase of the investigation, police confirmed the book was real. The message was deliberate. The code was intentional. The woman knew more than she said. But none of it was enough, because knowing something exists is not the same as understanding it. The case that refused to die. The Somerton man was buried. But the mystery wasn't. Years turned into decades. The Cold War ended. Governments collapsed. Technology advanced. But the code stayed silent. And the man stayed nameless. Until science finally caught up. Decades later, DNA would reopen the case. And what it revealed would challenge everything investigators believed about who this man was. And why he really died. Because the truth was not heroic. Not cinematic. But deeply human. And far more tragic